Hello. Good afternoon. Thank you, British Council, for inviting me to Korea. It's incredibly exciting to be here. I've been here for 2 days, and I have had a fantastic 2 days, which has been a mixture of two of the things I'm most interested in. One is art, and the other is the relationship between art, audiences, and how we can improve that relationship. And it's fantastic to see so many people here, because I'm not sure if we had a similar conference in London, there would be this many people for this particular subject. So I'm thrilled that the interest is very much here. Now, I know not that much about Korea and not that much about Korean art, but I do know an awful lot within the UK, within that context. So I plan on talking about the relationship between audiences and art, and how museums and galleries can improve that particular relationship and get to a greater understanding of each other. There's a very interesting relationship between artists, galleries, and audiences that I'm not quite sure has been completed over the last 20 years. There are significant changes afoot within particularly the digital sphere that will allow us to lead to a much deeper understanding between the three parts of that triangle. And that's some of the areas I want to touch on today. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the developments within the ways in which audiences have come together with art in new ways. I'm going to talk quite a lot about how some of the project work that the Tate has done, and I'm going to end and show you something that doesn't yet exist, but will be launching in the next 2 weeks, which is Tate's new website. You can't actually see it yet, and I can't show you live images, but I can show you a lot of images that are static that will hopefully put into practice some of the things that we're talking about. Now, when it comes to the Tate, and some of you who've been to London, if you've been to London, you'll almost certainly have been to one of the two Tates. Or if you've been to Liverpool, you may have been to Tate Liverpool. Or if you've been to the southwest of England, you may well have been to Tate St Ives. But in total, Tate receives somewhere in excess of 7.3 million visitors a year. So you might be wondering exactly why do we need more, or do we want more? But the truth is there's been a transformation in the relationship between audiences and contemporary art, particularly since 2000, when Tate Modern opened, when suddenly you could argue that over the last 10, 12 years, the relationship between contemporary and modern art and the audiences has moved from the fringes to the absolute mainstream. When it comes to contemporary art and modern art, it is a subject of public debate, it is a subject of public discourse, and of an enormous amount of interest, well beyond the artistic community. And it's that relationship that Tate is looking to foster. If you go to London sometime in the next 2 years, behind the Tate, we are building an enormous new physical space, and part of it opens this summer in time for the Olympics. That space is developed to house new art, and it's a building that will allow us to show contemporary and modern works in particular, and most notably modern works where we struggle in the building that we currently have to show them to their best effect. But actually, the biggest change, I think, is not in the physical space of the buildings and the way we show art, because that will certainly increase the numbers of the audience. I'm not entirely sure that it will increase the levels of understanding, necessarily, of the audiences who come to see it. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today is about the depth of understanding amongst a broad audience. And I'm not really talking about the very close art world. I'm talking about spreading it beyond that to a wider audience. And I've called it old media, new media, museums and galleries engaging with their audiences now and in the future. Because the other really interesting thing that's happened in the last few years has been an understanding that audiences matter. And it's no longer the case that galleries can present what they want with no discourse with their audience. Increasingly, audiences are demanding a debate, they're demanding a discussion, and want a closer relationship with the people who are putting this work on. We're now able to do that largely because of a new digital discourse that can take place. Excuse me. Last February, some of you may have seen, there's a project called the Google Art Project, where they took 17 museums in 9 different countries and presented their works in particular rooms online. It was a phenomenal project that Google are developing further this year, and they're talking to more galleries. What was interesting is that there were only 17 galleries that took part. My feeling is there should have been a lot more. And they didn't take part, in my view, for a sense of nervousness and a lack of surety about where this was going. The truth is, no one really has the answer to the digital future of where museums and galleries are going, but my own view is that you have to continually experiment the whole time, in the full knowledge that you might get things wrong, but you'll change and learn from what you did. After the launch of the Google Art Project, there's a podcast in America, and there's an American online magazine called The Slate. And this is a weekly program called Slate Gabfest. And after the launch of the Google Art Project, which they rather loved, one of the people said, "Can I say to the museums of the world, your websites suck?" For the translator means a load of rubbish. Maybe they don't want their websites to be too good. They want people to come to their museums, which I think is actually largely true, because people are very nervous about, and if you look at museum websites, bearing in mind the richness of their content, the ease with which you can put it online, it's remarkable how little has been done in relation to the digital experimentation within museums and galleries. Very few have moved this forward. Tate is believed to be somewhat ahead of the game on this, and that's why I want to show you, and I don't believe we're ahead of the industry, wider than our own, but we're making some strides in that direction. Now, these aren't my children, but my feeling is this is how lots of kids feel at the prospect of their parents saying, "Why don't we go to the gallery this afternoon?" And this I find amazing, because the thought of a gallery should be the most thrilling experience. But galleries, and maybe rightly, maybe wrongly, the way in which they present themselves is very calm, very quiet, and very, they're like cathedrals. And we need to change this, maybe not the presentation in the gallery, but outside of the gallery and how audiences can interact with the work. In many instances, it looks a bit like this. The very, very boring museum. Now, I personally don't think that, but I know a lot of people do. The first project I want to talk about, which we didn't do, but Google came to us, and Tate is viewed generally as quite experimental. When the most interesting players in this space, certainly in Western Europe and the States, are if you can make an alliance with one of the leading digital players. And in this case, Google came to Tate Britain and said, "Would you help us on the Google Art Project?" Tate said, "Yes, we will." And we put up a piece of work that's actually this piece of work, which is Chris Ophelia's No Woman, No Cry. Now, I can't show you this, unfortunately, online, but I would urge you to go to Google Art, have a look at this, because this allows you to view the artwork actually closer than you can with the human eye. And 17 galleries were asked to take one painting and do a megapixel of it and present it in a digital space. Excuse me. In addition to this, Google used their Street View technology, which allowed them to walk through the gallery. Now, Google launched this on February the 1st last year, and it's been phenomenally successful. No money changes hand, there's no commerce related to it. It is simply a desire on Google's behalf to bring art to a wider audience. And it's been viewed by millions of people. Now, some people say, this is dangerous, we shouldn't be doing this is taking people away from the gallery. I don't believe it at all. Partly because every page that Google Art Project has will have a page link back to the gallery. This is another project that took place a couple of years ago. This is called YouTube Play, which was done with Guggenheim Museum. Where Guggenheim put out a call to, I suppose, moving image artists, or just people who create moving images, to upload their moving images. 28,000 people uploaded, and they chose 100, which they then displayed at the Guggenheim. And this was a way of engaging with audiences in a way that simply wasn't possible before. In London, every year, we do an enormous installation at the Tate Turbine Hall. And last year was Ai Weiwei's Sunflower Seeds. Looks a little bit like this. And when you get really close up, it looks like that. There are 120 million seeds that were handmade and hand-painted. Now, originally, the audiences were allowed to go on the artwork, play with it, they could steal it, they could take some home, and Weiwei was absolutely in accordance with this. Unfortunately, we couldn't allow the audiences on it, because after 4 or 5 days, it threw up a dust that meant that it was slightly dangerous if you worked in the building for more than 12 or 13 hours. So we didn't allow people to walk on it. But what we did do is we created a video booth, which was just behind the artwork. There were 6 video booths, and we invited the audience to pose a question to Weiwei. And the question could be whatever you wanted. How do you make it? How do you feel about it? What does it mean? Whatever the question was, it was entirely up to the audience. 24,000 people uploaded questions. You can see them all on our website now. And we aggregated them, and Weiwei then responded back to the individuals with a response. So once again, the relationship between the gallery, the artist, and the work itself became complete. When it comes to social media, this is an area, this is Tate's Facebook page some weeks ago. We now have just about 340,000 people following us on Facebook and about 560,000 people following us on Twitter. And I'd like you to take hold of the numbers because it's incredibly important to our digital development. My own view is we'll have 1 million followers on Twitter and probably 500,000 within a year on Facebook. And it's an incredibly important part of our museum strategy. This is our Tate Twitter page, and we tweet sometimes up to 3 to 5 times a day. What this is allowing us to do is to have a different level of discourse with our audience. This is clearly not an academic relationship. It is clearly not the catalogue associated with the show, but it's a level of discussion and debate that we're very, very keen to have. And very few galleries and museums around the world are doing this yet. My feeling is they all will within a few years. For 10 years, I worked in the world of newspapers before joining the Tate, and it was a similar relationship. There was a lot of resistance to the digital space, and if you think about what's happened in the last decade in newspapers, you have no choice but to engage in this world. My feeling is it will be exactly the same for museums and galleries, albeit the need to engage will not be quite as extreme, but they will get there in the end. And Twitter matters, in my view, for the following reasons. It's an incredible form of distribution. It allows you to speak to an audience immediately in multiple ways. It's where things happen first. We had a very interesting, from a sad point of view, the painting I showed you earlier, which was Chris Ofili's No Woman, No Cry from the Google Art Project. There was a criminal trial in London where the young man in the painting, the tears of the mother have pictures of a young man in it. He was called Stephen Lawrence. And 18 years ago, he was killed by a group of white racists in London. And that painting was painted in part in response to the killing. 18 years later, they came to trial. We have this painting in the Tate collection. Within hours of the trial, when 2 of the 5 killers went to jail, we, with Chris Ofili's approval and with the mother of Stephen Lawrence's approval, we sent the photo to around 1 million people online. It took us 3 weeks to get the photo out of the collection, out of the store, and put it in the gallery. And it's now in the gallery. So in this way, we were able to engage in this particular instance, on a social situation that was very important, and we had a very relevant artwork to what was happening. As a search engine, Twitter absolutely rivals Google. It's an incredible aggregation tool. It's a fantastic, very cheap form of marketing. It costs nothing, it just costs time. It's more diverse, it's a very level playing field, it has a very long attention span, it creates communities of interest, and it's absolutely, an agent of change. This is an interesting one. The Museum of London have what they call a street museum app. Now, in the background is a picture of London in the present day, taken last year. And this was a photograph was taken. You can upload the photograph, and you can From the Museum of London, they have this photograph in their collection, this painting, and the painting is of London in sometime when the Thames froze over. So from this period, you can take a painting and put it over the current present situation or present geographical time that you're in, and it allows you to transpose one against the other. This has proven to be a very, very popular digital application. So, moving art from the fringes to the mainstream, I suppose started with this. When in 1976, the Tate bought this artwork, this Carl Andre's bricks, for about £15,000 and caused a massive uproar. People were hysterical. This is not art, we should not be doing this. And I suppose you could argue that the public discourse about modern art and contemporary art started with this work. Since then, the Tate has done all sorts of, and this was in Tate Modern, this is Olafur Eliasson in 2003. And I remember taking my then 5-year-old son to see this, and he couldn't quite understand how they'd managed to put the sun inside the building. But people absolutely loved this. And you can see the appetite for this work is incredible. If we'd had the digital capability that we have now, then this artwork would have been a fascinating digital experiment to add to the artwork in real life. Louise Bourgeois, fun enough, I just came from Leo Museum this morning and saw 2 others of these, but this was outside Tate Modern in 2007. Anish Kapoor in 2002. These are all some of the larger exhibits that have been shown at Tate Modern. And one of my favorites, Doris Salcedo's The Shibboleth in 2007, where if you want to talk about art and audiences, the audiences engaged with this. They fell into the hole, 2 people twisted their ankles, 1 broke their leg. It's not quite the level of audience interaction you want, but people were very much engaged with it. Now, going back to the digital space, one of the things that we have developed in the last 2 years is we now we blog a great deal. We never used to do this. Now, for those of you who work in art institutions, I implore you to ask your most senior people in the organization to do just this. On your right is a woman called Christine Riding, who is the curator of the Gauguin show, and on the left is Sir Nick Sirota, who is the director of all of the Tates. And I said to Nick, if we're going to take this seriously, you have to blog as well. Now, Nick is a little bit older than 60, isn't completely au fait with all things digital, but is hugely supportive. And Nick has now blogged several times. And it gives a very, very strong cue to the organization that we're taking this seriously. And on the right is Christine, who she's actually standing in her office in front of little pictures of the paintings from the Gauguin show that she was choosing to put up. Now, Christine blogged 36 times over a period of 3 months. About 400,000 people read her blog, and we received over 1,200 comments, which is very, very high. But the reason we're actually doing this is it allows people, we send this out on Twitter, we send this out on Facebook, and then people come back and read our content on our website. Because the truth is, at the moment, when it comes to museum websites, people tend to go to find out where you are, what time you're open, and what's showing. But the potential is much greater than that to engage and deepen the relationship with audiences. And your blogs, your Facebook, and your Twitter allows you to do just that in a discourse that is not normal for galleries to do. These are our current Facebook numbers, 337,000 on Facebook, 552,000 on Twitter. Now, if you ask people, why do you follow Tate on Twitter and Facebook, they'll say 8% for the perks. Sometimes we send them little free things. 28% to stay up to date. 42% do it because an association with the Tate is a really cool thing to do. Tate is a pretty cool institution, and we tweet really well. 4% is for inspiration, and 18% is for content. And so we have proportioned our messages in social space very clearly according to that. So starting from the top, this is our proposed portion of messages. This is what we do. In terms of rich content, it tends to be a mixture of very light. It's a quick look on the page. I'll show you the weather forecast in a minute. It's a quick look on the site, which is a work of the week. And it can be a very deep level where we produce a lot of moving image content that we send to our audiences to look at. In terms of news and events, it can be ephemeral, it can be pithy and short, it's highly audience focused, and it's frequently story led. And in terms of audience engagement, we have a lot of debates online. I'll show you some in a moment. There are some competitions, and there's a lot of user-generated content where people are asked to upload their own content. Now, one of the issues for museums and galleries is they're never quite sure who is coming to their galleries. When I talk about 7.4 million people, that's a true number, but I don't really know who they are. Within the social space, you know exactly who they are. This was a figure some time ago that we had. That 63% of our followers on Facebook were women, 34% were men, and 3% weren't sure. And you can see also from where they come from globally. So we understand more and more about our audience. Facebook also drives a lot of traffic to the website. These are examples of when we sent out something from Facebook and the spike in our web traffic that is associated with interesting content. So it brings people back in to engage with the art. Now, we don't actually do this for fun. We do it because we want people to view the collection that is the Tate. The Tate exists solely to increase the understanding and enjoyment of modern and contemporary and British art. That's all it exists for. Now, in doing so, it is also looking after the Tate's the national collection of 72,000 pieces of artwork. And it's deeply frustrating to us and the audience that we can only show in the physical space a small amount of that. Our web presence and our movement on Facebook, Twitter, and our website allows us to show a great deal more. So we send something out, people come back to the website, and hopefully they spend more time looking at more art to lead to a greater understanding and indeed enjoyment. We send out something called the Work of the Week, which leads to a lot of engagement. This is my favorite. We send out the weather forecast. So every Friday, we look outside the window. What does the weather look like this weekend? Well, it's very rainy. In this case, it's a rainbow. It's going to be rainy with showers. We send a picture out. Hundreds of thousands of people look at this. It's clearly not an academic exercise, but it's allowing the audience to come back in and view what is already theirs. The web traffic from the weather forecast is also significant. We have a Tate debate. Every week we have a debate. In this particular instance, we're asking people about should museums make better use of social media networks, and we ask our audience to come back with responses. There are also other Tate voices. We've asked curators to blog, curators to tweet, and here are 3 who are engaging frequently within the Twitter sphere. And the weather was so bad this day that we just sent one out, what's the weather like actually now? I'm being asked to hurry up, so I'm going to go through this. This is our current website. This is what the web page, if you go there today, it looks like this. I don't think it's great, but we are known to have a pretty strong website. But in terms of what is coming, it is really rather poor. And it's a website, essentially, that is a selling website. Our own view is that we should move to something like this, which is a website about art and art engagement and a discussion with our audiences. And our web is based on 3 things. It's based on content, community, and commerce. This is clearly content, but you'll notice in the bottom right, we are asking our audiences to come in, engage, and comment on the artwork. As you scroll down the page, these are 2 shows. And by the way, this image, the main lead image, will change every day and sometimes every week. As you scroll down, here we're talking about the shows that are on, and also the painting, some of the collection, and we move further into commerce as well. These are some of the pages that you can't see for real, but you'll see them from in about 10 days' time. You'll notice in every single page is embedded Facebook, Twitter, Tate on YouTube, and Tate on Flickr, because we want audiences to then send out the things that they like and get more audiences to come in again. I want to quickly move to, I'm being rushed for time here, I want to go to, this is our blog space, where we have a whole series of discussions and debates every day, every week, and we will prompt discussions by artists, by people from the gallery, and indeed engaging very deeply with our audiences. This is very new for art galleries, and art galleries are very nervous about this, because it's very, very rare that you have a gallery that asks its audience any questions. They show the work, but they don't really want an opinion back. This is opening that up completely. And you cannot engage in the digital space with one-way traffic. You have to allow the audience back in and to solicit their response, which is making some people, including me, a little nervous, because I know that some of what comes back will be rubbish, some of it will be fantastic, most of it will be somewhere in the middle between the two. This is a bit more of our Tate blog, and here's some of the comments that will come in. Here is a Tate debate that we have online. Nick Sirota blogging again. Nick blogging about the Gerhard Richter show that was in London a few weeks ago. A Tate debate, all of which are about audience engagement and furthering and deepening the relationship with the audience. But this is the really brilliant bit about what we're doing. If you go to Tate's website, it's very difficult, and most museum websites, it's very difficult to search in the way that you want to search. Here, we have put in the top search box, can we search by portrait? And there's about 2,000 something, 800 and something, how many have we got? 2,658 portraits in the Tate website. And you can bring them up this way. Oh, you can bring them up this way. And you can bring one up to the fore. You can see it that way. You can have a little look at that. You can go a little bit closer. And on the left, you can find out details about who painted it. On the right, you can find out further links and some deeper academic writings about the piece of work. And in the bottom left, you can even find out exactly where it was painted. Now, if you like that painting, the other thing to remember is don't look within your own world for inspiration about developing your digital strategy. You have to go outside of it. We spend most of our time looking at retail websites, at newspaper websites, and talking with people like Google and with YouTube about what is the best way to maintain time with our audience spent on our site. And one of the ways is if you like that picture, you might like this. And at the bottom here, it says other works of art that might interest you. And you can keep clicking on here and go right through the entire collection, which allows people to spend more time and deepen their relationship with both the gallery and art. So if you go back to this painting, which we chose, it's the third one down, we chose that. You can find more information about that, and you can go on forever like this. It's fantastic, and I do. And you can keep going, keep going. So let's go back to this. This was back to our portraits, all 658 portraits you can view. You can pick one up, you can look like that. Or if you don't want anything on it at all, you can look like that. And actually, if you really want, we have a facility that will allow you to look at every single piece of work that we have in the collection that will just come on your screen for as long a time as you want. You can have each piece there for 1 second or 5 minutes. It's entirely up to you. So for the first time, we are putting the audience at the heart of what Tate does. So we have 7.4 million who visit the gallery space. We have about 20 million at the moment who visit our digital site. Our ambitions are to both grow the actual numbers, but what would really be an achievement for us is to increase the depth of that relationship between us and the audience, and where we can with the artist. Thank you very much.